Thanks for taking a moment to join us today. We're going to get into the teaching, a novel approach to joint health. Multiple aspects that we want to cover today. Glucosamine, chondroitin, do they work? How about some new approaches, novel approach? All right, a novel approach to joint health. Now, we've done some other teachings on live streams about joint health. This one, as we termed it, a novel approach. So this is a kind of a step up, a concentrated, condensed, just the facts. I'm not going to give you a lot of the gory details, just the facts about what's important about your joint health. 30 million Americans suffering from significant levels of joint dysfunction. 30 million plus. It's believed that up to maybe close to 2 million suffer from rheumatoid or autoimmune self-attacking approaches to the joint health. We're going to cover what does osteo mean, what does rheumatoid, and then what does the middle ground really mean to you. So if you're in your 30s, you're in your 50s, you're in your 70s, it doesn't matter. Because we're going to cover that whole spectrum of issues, whether it's wear and tear, whether it's immune destruction, or impaired repair. We're going to cover it all. So let's get into it. A novel approach to your joint health. Osteo, rheumatoid, and then we're just going to talk about the combo. Okay? So what do I mean by that? Osteoarthritis really is an overview of a typical wear and tear, trauma to the joint, life issues, athletics, trauma, pounding, running, people that run. There's a chronic wear and tear that takes place. The body's been given the ability to repair. Unfortunately, those processes can be interrupted. I'll explain in a moment. The next level is rheumatoid. So this one is typically termed wear and tear, chronic abuses. Rheumatoid accounts or brings in another factor. Rheumatoid brings in the effect of immune destruction, autoimmune types of problems. And all I mean by that is you have either an aberrant immune response to your tissues. You can be anywhere in the body. For right now, we're going to keep this simple, to your joint spaces. You have an autoimmune self-attacking. So rheumatoid gets into this self-attack mode where you're developing antibodies to your own tissue. So what's happening? I have a joint space. I have cartilage here, and then I have a synovium in between. The synovium is that fluid, that kind of that gelatin-like matrix, that cushioning mechanisms. So one, what can traumatize that? Well, with wear and tear, athletics, trauma, I begin to break down these pieces. They go into this synovium, this gelatin wax-like matrix. Now that triggers an inflammatory response. The body begins to produce inflammatory proteins. So what happens is I begin to create a tremendous amount of inflammation. So not only is the joint breaking down, but your body's been given the ability by God to be able to repair and heal and restore that. Excessive inflammation develops, and now I further damage and destroy the joint. It becomes a fulfilling type prophecy. So one, wear and tear. I break down, components make their way into the joint space. I produce inflammation. Rheumatoid, self-attacking, autoimmune, or the combination. Now, what do I mean by that? See, and I even taught this for years, that there were two distinct entities, and they didn't cross paths. Two distinct. The reality of it is, what we have now is an understanding that these have shared common territory. You can have osteo, wear and tear, that then begins to break down cartilaginous type material. It falls into the synovium. I begin to develop inflammatory proteins. I won't even get into the significance of which ones those are. You produce significant amount of inflammation. This can begin to trigger an antibody-mediated response. So now I have not only wear and tear contributing and inflammation contributing, but now I could even have immune derangements, right? An immune system that's deranged and attacking the joint space, quasi-rheumatoid, and or autoimmune antibodies. So, with that being said, for years, I've said, here's what you must do. So I'm going to get the cart before the horse. I'm going to come back and give you the approach as to how you protect joints. Number one, we've got to understand that your diet plays the principal role. I need to have a whole foods diet. If I eat a pro-inflammatory, processed, white, refined, lots of bad fats, I produce more inflammation. I do not encourage the body to repair. So what I consume plays a huge role. Do I eat berries? Do I eat colored fruits and vegetables? Do I eat antioxidants in my foods? Do I eat a tremendous amount of refined products, or do I eat more whole foods that have live enzymes? Do I take omegas, quality ones? Do I eat a lot of rancid, deep-fried foods? So what you consume plays a key role. Number two, what do I supplement with? Told you for years, I think the basics are for joint support, individuals need to be doing the buffered C ascorbates, because that's how you make much of your your collagen type matrices. You've got to be on the omegas. And we're even going to introduce, as we talk a little bit more about these SPMs, specialized pro-resolvin mediators, and how they help to turn off the aberrant immune response. So they're not just anti-inflammatories, they help to redirect and turn down the body, resolving the inflammatory immune response. So, okay, rheumatoid, self-attacking, osteodestruction, I need to eat better, I need to supplement well, I need to take in nutrients that support. So C, the omegas. I need to use wisdom. I'm not so sure that folks that run on pavement 12, 13, 14 miles at a time or 40 miles a week, I'm not so sure. I often say if God wanted you to run those distances, and I should qualify it, on hard pavement, he'd have made you a horse. We're not horses. We're not meant to run those types of distances. So if you're going to run those distances, I think you should run on softer mediums, because the pounding and the jarring will eventually take a toll on ankles, knees, certainly the hips. That's a discussion certainly for another day. The process. Back at the process. So glucosamine. Now, I've pulled them, and I'm a huge fan of quality forms of glucosamine and chondroitin. And why would I say that? Because for years I've had literature to back up and document that. Daniel Olbrecht at Clinical Neurosciences University Hospital of Geneva, talking about the specific mechanisms that quality forms of chondroitin have at reducing these enzymes and collagenases that are damaging the joint. Number two, how it encourages hyaluronate and proteoglycans that feeds the cartilaginous structures, this portion that covers the joint, right, the cartilage. And then lastly, how it reduces the immune effect. Talked to you for years about the role of precursors to glycosaminoglycans, in particular glucosamine. And my boys over in Italy at the University of Rome, La Sapienza, Italy, Paroli, Antonelli, Buffoni, and we should have put DiMatteo in there, and we'd had all four of these guys rolling. But we got the three from Italy. Back in 1991, documented that the right forms, quality forms of purified forms of glucosamine most certainly impacted joint structures and spaces. Thirdly, University of Maryland documents that depending upon the type and the form, dietary supplements highly depend on a variety of factors. Quality raw materials, manufacturing process, the packaging, and so on, have everything to do with the quality. 74% of glucosamine products that are brought into this country right now, which they are impure, have significant level of impurities, meaning you don't absorb as well. So we have a very specific concept as to understand that glucosamine has to be a purified product. So does the chondroitin. So those are just your basics, glucosamine and chondroitin, that go beyond C omegas. Where does the novel approach come into this today? So where does the novel approach? Because that's what I've talked about. That's why this is an uptick, a condensed version of what we've done in the past. This is going another level using type 2 undenatured collagens, and also a specific form of hops or isoalpha acids. And there's a twofold mechanism. There's research to document that the correct forms of type 2 undenatured collagen, actually when you ingest them, it's not about you taking them in and literally going to your body and rebuilding the joint like C does, and how omegas quiet down the inflammation, and how pro-resolvin mediators can reduce the inflammation, or how glucosamine helps to build the structure in chondroitin. By the way, I really believe that in many cases we underdose the glucosamine chondroitin. I will use as many as 3 grams up to 4 grams of glucosamine for folks that are having significant joint space issues. So, now we go beyond that. So the novel approach then says that entering into our traditional, joint essentials or glucosamine type preps, and going to the next level of that, for those of you with significant joint issues, you've got to go another level, which is a type 2 undenatured isoalpha acids. I like the combination. Here's why. This undenatured type 2, it's not about it just getting. David Trentham was one of the first to document this at Harvard, by the way, years ago, probably in the late 90s. And the concept was, this is very technical, I'm probably not even going to get it completely right myself. It's not about you taking these 2 compounds and them getting to the joint space itself, like glucosamine, chondroitin, C, and so on do. These are about interacting to what's called the GALT system, the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, and specifically what's called the Peyer's patches. What that does when this compound gets there, it literally has the ability to tone down the body's immune activated response, or this autoimmune response. And by the way, David Trentham, the physician researcher at Harvard, showed that he actually had success with using undenatured type 2 collagen, dosing specific doses in folks with rheumatoid arthritis to tone down the immune inflammatory response. Hence, the novel approach. We feed the joint, we support the joint via diet, quality forms of the right forms, purified glucosamine, chondroitin. Now we come another approach for those of you that have not received enough benefit with that. And we try to not just suppress inflammation. So if you want to do ibuprofen, and you want to do anaproxas, and you want to do non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, know this. First of all, they speed up degeneration of the joint. They impair repair. They are GI toxic. They induce gastritis and ulceration. They increase your cardiovascular risk, and they damage your kidneys. You want to use the Tylenol? I mean, when you're in pain, you have to do what you have to do. I mean, I've had some back issues myself. I understand. But know 2 things. You start using high doses of acetaminophen, they are liver toxic. They are renal toxic because of depletion of glutathione. They're not your friends. Engage in a novel approach. Back to, what kind of time we got here, Josiah? Okay, we're going to run out of time. So here's what we need to do. You need to understand clearly, this is not about getting this to the actual joint space itself. This is about getting to your body, and then your body literally blocking, I shouldn't use that word because it doesn't really block. It tones down the body's immunologic NF-kappa B. Okay, that's what it's doing. It's toning down the body's immune mediated. So back to the beginning. Osteo wear and tear, rheumatoid autoimmune, immune mediated, self-attacking. But what we're learning is, for most of these, there's a combination of the both. They're superimposed. Now, someone could have true frank rheumatoid, or true just frank, they played football and their neck and their cervical area is destroyed from impact head to head, and knees have taken so many blows, or someone that has run umpteenth marathons in their life and their hips and their knees are shot because of the trauma to the, I get that. But understand that for most of us, we have a combination of the 2. This is novel because now you take in the structural components, and now you don't just block inflammation, you resolve it, the resolving the inflammatory response, and then you use this novel approach, this collagen advanced essentials, to do what? To begin to interact, not with the joint itself, But with the GALT system, gut-associated lymphoid tissue, the Peyer's patches, which then detrains, because it's a collagen matrix, what are we attacking? Collagen. This is so awesome. Let me just tell you. When I read Trentham's work years ago, we immediately started making it in the lab. Immediately started making it in the lab for folks with joint issues and so on, because it detrains the body from attacking joint spaces. It's awesome. It's an awesome concept. Then you throw in the isoalpha acids, another novel mechanism to helping with inflammation. What are we doing? We're structurally supporting. We are feeding joint spaces. And now we're going to come a whole nother direction and reduce the inflammatory/immune triggers. This is just awesome from a joint health standpoint. For those of you that are battling joint issues, this is not fluff. There is literature piece after literature piece on this right now. And it all, to the best of my knowledge, the original work that I read goes back to the late 90s. It was very unavailable at that time. We had to seek out one supplier that had an truly undenatured. See, that's another thing. There's collagen preps in tons of joint preps out there. Most of them have been denatured. It's lost its polymeric structure. It's been damaged. It's been either damaged in processing, heat, chemical extraction. It has to retain a specific structure so that when your body sees it, it recognizes that these Peyer's patches in the gut wall and begins to tone down its immune response to your own collagen matrix. Extremely novel. Trentham's work was awesome. I'm shocked that it was not furthered, but in the last 7 to 8 years, folks have begun to follow up with it. And even though we've got into maybe into a 20-year post that frame, Trentham's work was just incredibly advanced and way ahead of his time. Novel approach to preserving and saving your joints. Don't wait until you're bone on bone. If you've got some level of function in those joint spaces, begin feeding those joints right here, or this, so to speak. Take your omegas, change your diet, be good to your joints. Realize you've got to help them repair. If that doesn't do it, you've got some SPMs to try to resolve the inflammatory. But I believe the real novel approach to that is to go to the collagen advance with some type of joint support prep. Eat right. Take your omegas, omega 800s. This is a great approach for those of you battling joint issues. God bless you. Thanks for being with us. Stay tuned for the next live stream. Thanks so much for being with us.